Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. Okay, those that are sitting in the very back, come closer because otherwise I have to project. Makes me tired. Feeling Ben. Uh, so let's take a nice deep sigh of relief. And here we are in our course on aging here and there, aging everywhere. Now aging is a song that is universally sung. Aging is a thing we can ignore when we are young. But when you are older and begin to have dementia, you'll think back upon this course and wish you'd paid attention. Aging here and there. Aging everywhere. Aging everywhere. Aging. Today we talk about exercise and longevity. Really fascinating lecture. I had a lot of fun preparing it. I'm building off your questions, what you guys are interested in. Fantastic field, and we'll also use it to talk about physiological decline, how it differs from death and disease, and what exercise can do about it. So let's take a nice deep sigh of relief. And so far we talked about how the biological hallmarks of aging can be arranged in circuits that give rise to production of damage. It rises with the age. The houses produce garbage like senescent cells, cause inflammation, stem cell exhaustion, and they push physiological systems across thresholds of disease, and ultimately death. So far we talked about binary things. Death is yes or no. Disease is more continuous, but you can say yes or no, diagnosed or not diagnosed. So if death has 3 Ds, death, disease, and decline, decline is different from death and disease because decline is continuous. And unlike disease, it happens in everyone. Right? So we have death when X crosses a threshold, disease when X crosses the disease threshold. And both of them, with time, the log hazard or the log incidence goes up and saturates or even goes down for disease, exponential. But decline, the third D, is different. And the best thing we can do, the best intervention we have against aging, the most scientifically proven, the best understood, and the best one that works on almost everything is exercise, physical exercise. Not exercising is like taking a depression pill and a diabetes pill. I'm going to talk to you why that is and how much we should exercise, what kind of exercise, dose response, all this stuff, why it's so important, and it's how it relates to this relentless physiological decline. It also prevents diseases, all the 4 horsemen: cancer, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, and neurodegeneration. It helps with mood, good feeling, prevents depression, all these things. And decline. Yeah, I'll tell you. Aren't you interested? I'll tell you. Yeah, it's not a gym here. All right, so let's talk about, I'll start with decline. So many physiological functions decline linearly with age. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to plot here age. So this is 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. And you're going to plot function. So function, what's a function, for example? It's kidney filtration rate or maximum heart rate or nerve conduction velocity. They start out, usually they grow when you're, like they peak around 25, something like that. But we don't care about that. That's for development. That's for the other course. Where much more is known. They reach their maximal value, F max. And then, if you measure lots of people and you average, they go down linearly and they reach a maximum at around age 110. And I'm talking about when I say zero, it's not exactly zero. Let's call this F min, which is the minimum function required for life. So this was discovered in the 50s by a guy called Nathan Schock in the National Institute of Aging. Then Streller and Milvan in 1960 did this data collapse. It's a line. It really looks like a line. Function 1 minus t over 110. Maybe some of you know the formula for your heart rate, 220 minus your age, maximum heart rate when you exercise. So it's more like 210 minus 3/4 your age. That's a better fit, but same thing. Yeah.
Does the F max vary with per person?
Okay, great. So does the effect vary? It does vary, but there are some things where exercise can't help you, like maximum heart rate. But there are some things where exercise can help you. And it varies a lot. So, and that's a very important graph now. This is going to be very important for our lecture. This physiological measure is the one that doctors think is the most correlated to your probability to survive and not die.
How did they arrive at 110?
What?
How did they arrive at 110 as that number?
You extrapolate the data.
I didn't understand.
You look at the data, and you continue the line, and it hits 110.
Like the car and it stops at 110?
Yeah, it hits minimal function at 110 if you extrapolate.
And then you die.
Well, you die before that.
So people who live to 120, for example.
Yeah, they obviously not a lot of data here, but
Sure. Okay.
all right. The people don't live to 120, by the way. The world record, I think, 119 Japanese women. Top 10 are women. We're talking also about men and women difference. Yeah. Okay. So here's the and reach minimum function at about 110. That's extrapolated, right? This is cross-sectional data. Many different people. Now, the most important thing that can determine your resilience is what's called the maximum ability of your body to absorb oxygen, VO2 max. Is when you're exercising to your max, the maximum amount, some of you asked me about air, right? We breathe 12 kilograms of air every day. Okay, but how much of it do we keep? We take the oxygen, so I'll tell you why. Is the maximum amount of oxygen we keep. So how do you measure this? You run on I did this a few weeks ago. You run on a treadmill, and you have a mask, and you measure the oxygen you breathe, minus the oxygen you inhale and exhale, how much oxygen stays in. As you go, until you can't run anymore, it's like incline, and then you reach your VO2 max. And its units are milliliters per minute per kilogram. You normalize it by your body weight. Now, why is this so important? Because when you exercise or do anything in your body, your muscles need energy. Energy comes from ATP, which is a molecule that has 3 phosphate bonds. You cut off a phosphate bond, you get energy. And there are these machines, enzymes that break that bond and get energy. One important machine like that contracts the muscles. fibers. So the muscles need ATP. Our muscles have some ATP, so if I go like this, I burn the ATP store in my muscle. Then I have about another minute where there's another store called creatinine. But after that, you have to make ATP. How do you make ATP? You burn sugar. Sugar called glucose. Just like burning, a fire needs oxygen, right? At first, you don't have enough oxygen in your muscles to make all the ATP, so you ferment the glucose, as to say, you burn it with not enough oxygen. And what happens to a fire that doesn't have enough oxygen? It makes smoke. So the cells also make smoke. They release the carbon as lactate. Lactate is what makes your muscles burn. And if you don't have oxygen, your muscles stop functioning. So your body needs oxygen. The lactate makes the blood acidic. That's sensed by neurons that tell your brain, breathe more. Brain starts increasing the breathing rate. Oxygen causes the capillaries in the lung to dilate. Your lungs become much more effective. Like you have some dead space in your lungs now. Not anymore. Your lungs are like, great, open. Oxygen comes to the muscles. And now they can burn glucose with a lot of oxygen, and they don't make smoke anymore. They use the Krebs cycle, 32 ATPs per glucose, whereas before they just got 2 ATPs per glucose more. See, that's why we need oxygen. And our ability to keep the oxygen is basically determines what we can do. Right? So I'm going to plot here VO2 max. And I'm going to plot 3 lines. This is age. So it declines with age. Like everything, declines with age continuously. Everyone. But it's different for different people, this particular VO2 max, because you can change it. Like oxygen chamber increases by 10%. This is the median. This is the top 5%. And this is the bottom 5%. Basically physical fitness. Okay? If you extrapolate those 3 lines, they all hit 0 at 110. It's really interesting. Now, why is it so important? Is because of activities of daily living. So if you want to run a marathon in 2.15 hours, which is very fast, you need a 70. It's no one here. If you want to sleep, so this 0 here actually, it's 0 is actually here. This is the minimum function. This is how much you need to sleep. So you also need something, I don't know, something like 10. A little bit above that is to walk 2 kilometers per hour. Okay? Above this is climbing stairs briskly. Above this is run 10 kilometers in an hour. Run, okay. So your VO2 max determines what you can do, in an extended amount of time. That's why it's so important. And when we think about exercise and aging, I go here by Peter Attia, MD, who has this great book called Outlive. Anybody heard of Peter Attia? A few people. He has a nice podcast. He's like a great science communicator. So he calls it, you need to think about your last decade of life, let's say when you're 100, what activities you want to do, and prepare for it. So it's called the Centenarian Decathlon. Decathlon is like 10 sporting events. Here, the decathlon is picking up a grandchild, carrying 2 bags of groceries, up the stairs. So if you now can do it, what about when you're 80? Which line do you want to be? Did I explain myself? And there are different things you can do, but exercise is the biggest tactic right now that we have to achieve that. And how much can you change VO2 max? So you can change it. We'll talk about the kinds of exercise and how to change it. And basically, if you do 8 weeks of moderate aerobic exercise. You can increase it by 10 to 15%. And if you do years of anaerobic plus aerobic, it's documented you can increase it by 20 to 40%. We'll talk more about kinds of exercise, but it's possible to start exercising and kind of walk on the curve. Okay, so between the 5% and 95%, there's 10 years of lifespan. Okay, so it's not exercising is a much bigger risk for mortality than smoking, diabetes, like hypertension, high blood pressure. It's like major risk factor. Between the 50% and 95%, there's 5 years. Between 95% and the 99%, there's a small but significant difference. So there's some diminishing returns. You don't have to be like an Olympian. But going from 5% to 50% is really achievable. 5 years of extra life, you can decide what you want to do with it. But not only for the future, for now, it also determines what you can do, right? And also, it improves your mood. It's very good for now, not just for the future. Yeah.
Two things. Let's say Olympic athletes don't harm other systems because of the.
Is there too much exercise? Yes. Yeah, it's controversial. Nobody knows. What else?
And is that like, I don't know, they get to the age of 30 or 40 and they stop like partly. Is this also create some kind of huge change?
If you stop exercising, then you go back and you lose the muscle mass and all that stuff.
So you need to continue like.
Yeah, when you continue, you have the benefits. He told me to go to yoga, and I say no, no, no. I know I've been lax about my VO2 max, and it's low, low, low. I ain't got the time, and my professor, he can't rhyme. He told me to go to yoga, and I say no, no, no. There's very little beta oxidation. My mitochondria have lost their vibration, yeah. They're not burning up those fatty acids, no, no. No change will happen if you don't open up the door. Well, I guess I'll just go home. I got lots of friends to talk to on the phone. Yeah, he told me to go to yoga, and I said no, no, no. I know I've been lax about my VO2 max, and it's low, low, low. Well, I ain't got the time, and my professor, he can't rhyme. He told me to go to yoga, and I said no, no, no. Thank you. All right. So I talked about the mitochondria. They burn glucose, but actually, after let's say 20 minutes, I'm looking for my marker. So also, cognitive decline is also linear with age. Memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, processing speed, even without dementia, right? There's something that rises with age. Crystallized knowledge or world knowledge, all kinds of wisdom, and subjective well-being. So it's not everything declines. Do you know where my marker is?
No.
You see it, Asami? The podium? Zeh? No, that's not it. I'm looking for. Here it is. Okay. Yeah. What do you want to ask?
You specified here the units that you're referring to when you said that it declines linearly you're saying that it's linear, it's not even. If you don't specify how you measure it, it tells me nothing.
So you can do like reaction rate measurements, that's in milliseconds, or you can do memory tests, so you get accuracy. And then what you measure is the z-score, which means how many, the test minus the mean divided by standard deviation. And you see this. Except for crystallized knowledge, it goes like this. Yeah.
Are you saying it's linear on like a population level or an individual level? Because I know that in individuals it can happen really rapidly.
Okay, so this is a cross-section on the population level, but what happens in real life is that you lecture, then you fall off the stage, you break your hip, you're 65, and now you have to be in bed for a long time. You lose your muscle mass, and you're in pain, and you stop exercising, and you get depressed. So there could be things like that. There are things like that. In general, it's more like that when you look at individuals. Yeah, this is a cross-section. That's the reality. That's why it's very important, as I'll tell you, to preserve your bone mass and muscle mass and stability so you don't fall. Because if you fall after age 65, break your hip, you have a 30% chance of dying that year because of infections and stuff like that. It's really very deadly to fall when you're old. How can you prevent falling? Yeah, why? Why are you exercising? Huh? You need stability, flexibility. You need grip strength so you can hold on. You need your nervous system to command your muscles. You need your VO2 max, because when you're stressed, especially suppose you're like shoveling snow and you fall, you need your VO2 max. So VO2 max is so important because when you're in crisis, like you have an infection, or and you're about to almost die, your body's breathing very, very hard. You need all the energy you can. So the VO2 max is also your spare capacity. And your grip strength also very important. So all these things are like usually not discussed, but it's also critical. And in women, menopause causes a big decline in bone density. So bone density, so one difference between men and women. This is bone density, bone mineral density in men. And this is in women. So what age is this? Right. So for some reason, menopause is really, really timed very well, 50 plus minus 2. And the lack of estrogen removes protection from blood vessels and bone, and women start getting lots of heart attacks and frailty. So one argument in favor of hormone replacement therapy is that the tiny increase, that it's not even clear if it's true or not in cancer, is trivial compared to the huge risk of falling. So that some people say that. Hormone replacement therapy. So there's a big controversy about that. I'm not a doctor. Don't follow my advice on medical issues. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a wannabe medical doctor. Interesting, right? Yeah. It's bone. It's not in some other functions, but menopause is particularly for bones and also heart attacks, cardiovascular. Okay, so we're really getting into this VO2 max graph, right? So where are we here? Exercise, decline, cognitive decline, VO2 max song. Okay, now we switch from Peter Attia to systems aging. Peter Attia is a doctor who treats, he's like a longevity medicine, which is a new field, treating basically healthy people who want to enhance human enhancement, want to enhance their function. So Peter Attia says, I look at the people and I want them to be elite, and I want them to be elite 20 years younger than they are, for example, if they want to hike when they're 80.
Is there something to do also to prevent the cognitive decline? Like some sort of
Cognitive decline? Yeah. Exercise helps also with cognitive decline, and Being educated helps with cognitive, and keep your mind active helps with cognitive. It's like also gives you spare capacity. So when you have neurodegeneration, you have less stress, depression, hurt memory. So try to have social relationships, and so yeah, there's a lot to do about that. Okay, so for a long time, this 3Ds, I was fine SR model with death and disease because threshold crossing, SR model. You remember the damage looks like this on average with age, so it's accelerating. And in individuals, it looks like this, and it crosses a threshold, and you get the exponential rise. But what's this? Where can you get from this model a linear continuous decline? Because the damage is low and then fast. What gives you a linear decline? Where does 110 come from? And it's very crucial for people like me, because if your model can't explain a basic thing about aging, you have to throw away the model. That's what we do in science. We take our favorite model and we challenge it, try to make it fail. The more times it doesn't fail, the more we believe that it captures some simplicity inside the undoubted complexity. Because you can say, maybe this decline is because there's like irreducible complexity of biological processes that are interacting, and together they're averaging out something to give you that. That's possible, right? But if you can find a simpler explanation, doesn't mean it's true, but you can test it. You have a hope to manipulate it. So how can you mathematically get a linear decline like that from the SR model? And about half a year ago, we did it. And then I knew I can teach this course. You have the whole picture. Got it. You nailed it. So saturating removal model, which remember has the houses, the garbage, the trucks. Houses are built linearly with time. The trucks get saturated according to Michaelis-Menten plus noise. Okay.
But it's like with the chain reaction, right? So like it's so it gets exponential up to some point, but the point when it gets exponential depends on the initial rise, like how much of the initial sensors you get.
Mm-hmm. That's possible, but
Linear in that
I want to see a different explanation, but it's possible. I mean, it could be more explanations. So we need to add to this another assumption. How does damage X, which in our course is senescent cells, affects physiological function? It has to be all functions, right? So as you remember, we have our stem cells, altered stem cells, making damaged differentiated cells. That's the houses, making senescent cells, the zombies. They make the SASP, which is inflammatory cytokines. And these inflammatory cytokines cause inflammation and stem cell exhaustion and other things. And they're systemic, they're in the entire body. This is X. Inflammation rises in all old people. It's called sterile inflammation because there's no bacteria or viruses. It's an alarm signal. Inflammation as a hallmark on all cells, all organs, it reduces function. The reason is it's an override signal. It says there's an alarm now. Stop your normal function, or reduce it, and prepare to fight. Prepare for injury. So all function is reduced. Not to zero, but some minimum good. So we know that function should decrease with X. But how? What's the mathematical form? Again, in biology, it's not hard to guess. Things like these inflammatory factors, they touch receptors, and those receptors affect how cells behave. And receptors, we have a mathematical function for that we already met in our course. Functional decline should go like, this is called, remember Michaelis-Menten? Function which says that the functional decline has a halfway point. It's the maximum. This halfway point has to do with the binding of the ligand to the receptor. How many here are not clear about the source of this function? So we had it in our exercise number 2. We solved it. Did you see that? How many of you handed in the exercise? Okay. And this is the halfway point. This is the level of x where you get half of maximal function. So this is plausible. Now what is this halfway point? How should evolution tune our organs to respond to damage? So we can think that natural selection would make it so that the damage you have when you're young doesn't hurt you that much. Right? So the halfway point should be sort of distinguishing between the damage when you're young, or like the maximum amount of damage you expect when you're young due to injuries and things like that. And we already have something like that. It's like the trucks. The trucks are also like that. They're designed for the young. So they have a halfway point that we called K. So let's think that Km equals K. And then our function goes something like, or let's say our function, I'm going to subtract the minimum function and divide by the maximum minus the minimum. This thing makes sure this is between 0 and 1. 1 is maximum and 0 is minimum. It's going to be 1 minus, this is decline, or 1 minus this. Why 1 minus? Because this is a decline, and at x equals 0, you get 1, which is maximal function. At x goes to infinity, this becomes 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. You get minimum function. Did I explain myself? So now we need to so this is, let's call this f. Now we need to compute f, an average f over the population. That's the cross section. We look at this and we say, okay, let's average over the population. Okay, we have the average of this is the average of this plus the average of this. Average of noise is. Now let's also use our steady state assumption, which we did before. Because houses are built so much slower than trucks remove, we can freeze age and see how the trucks work. Just like when I want to ask how my kid jumps, I don't care that they grow older or in the middle of the jump. So 0 equals eta t minus beta x over k plus x. I can do the average here, right? Average. So 1 minus, right? So dividing by beta, eta t over beta, right? This thing, average x over k plus x, equals eta t, so, which is eta t. I divide by beta. I'm assuming, of course, all people have the same parameters, which we'll talk about later. Which is, if you plug in the parameters that we fit from totally different data from survival curves, it's 110. Eta over beta is 110 years. So amazingly, the same model gives you a linear decline with the same 110. That's a very important moment for a scientist, like when you see that. Isn't that amazing? Sure. Hope even if you didn't follow the math, at least maybe the excitement. The math can actually be exciting. I know for some people it was ruined by some teacher in the 4th grade. Okay. And that's why it's for all functions that are influenced by inflammation, like a Michaelis-Menten function. Let's challenge the model some more. Okay? We want to challenge it. We want to challenge it in all possible ways. If you're an honest scientist, you take all the data that you have and try to push your model against it. You want to make it fail. So if you look at the literature, you find that there are some physiological functions that don't decline linearly with age. And they have to do with muscles. So maybe you know that people can be strong at my age. Like I was 25, I'm stronger. And then they start declining. Okay? I can't run as fast, but I'm strong. You've got to believe me. You believe me? Okay. I'm 55. Okay. So when you look at something like grip strength, again, very important and also correlated with mortality, and also very important for not falling. Okay. In kilograms, you know this machines, this function of age. So it rises, of course, it reaches a peak at 25. So it stays kind of high until around age 50, 60, and then it starts declining. 110. So it's more concave. That's gait speed, walking speed, muscle grip strength, things like that. Muscle power, by the way, goes like this. It is linear power is force times velocity because you lose fast twitch fibers faster than slow twitch fibers, and you have a problem. Can we get this from the model? Okay, so we want to test it. So we say, for some reason, for some evolutionary reason, muscles are more protected from the inflammation. What does that mean? The halfway point of the bad thing that inflammation does for muscle is higher. You need more inflammation to reach 50% reduction in function. How do we model that? We add an A here. A, let's say if it's 2, it means you need twice as much inflammation to hurt. And then you can solve it, and you get a function that looks like this. Doesn't matter, the details. And you get this. You get a whole set of functions, depends what A is. They're more and more convex. So this tells you muscles are more resilient than other organs. Maybe because we also use them more. Okay. Let's push the model even more, okay? This model, maybe this is just a fluke. Maybe it's just like a luck, okay? What about other organisms? We know beta over eta for other organisms because we fit it. Beta over eta, by the way, what is beta over eta? Is this 110, but from the point of view of beta is the maximum truck capacity. So beta over eta is the age where the trucks equal the houses. It's the age where your production hits the truck maximum capacity. You can live beyond that because the noise can save you. But it's a number we can calculate for mice. Okay? Now in humans, it's 110. That means you die at age 80 decades before. And you still have some function when you die. In mice, or in humans, beta over eta is 110 years. And the average age is 80 or so. In mice, beta over eta is 1.8 years, but they live 2.5 years. That's to say, mice are in a different regime. Their thing declines, according to the model, before they die. They should burn out faster in mice years. That's prediction. Now we have goosebumps. Like, is it true? Is our model going to be? Or can we just throw out the model? This is all this work for nothing. So we went to the mouse longitudinal health study, of which there's a lot, and you look at functions. So this is age divided by age 50. So like in humans, this is age 80. In mice, this is 2.5 years. Function. It's like this. In mice, it looks like this. It's amazing. Mice burn out faster in mice years. Why do they live? They're in cages and protected, and like in the nature they would be very low fragility. In nature, you can't find a mouse that's more than 1 year old because the owls take care of them. So that creates a way to compare organisms in terms of their frailty. You can say. So a lot of biologists studying mouse aging don't know this difference, but it's huge.
Did you reverse the numbers by accident, or am I misunderstanding? The mouse beta rate should be 2.5 or 1.8?
It's 1.8. So
right there.
Human bed overhead is larger than the median lifespan. Here it's smaller than the median lifespan.
Okay.
So this is
Median lifespan is
oh,
2.5 years.
yeah, 2.5 years.
In lab.
Yeah, in the wild it's much less. So mouse burn out faster.
Just like the C. elegans that can't move anymore or something.
Yeah, so C. elegans, if you calculate it over beta, is 3 days. And C. elegans that live, let's say, 20 days, it moves for 3 days and then stops moving. Just stops moving. It's like dead in the water.
But they just live.
They live, yeah, they live, but they don't move. So that's another example. Okay, great. So now I'm going to say that we have, I want to tell you about what kind of exercise, how much exercise, how exercise extends your lifespan, and the difference between men and women. But I'll do that after the break. Let's continue. So, I was asked a question. I skipped a step that makes something a little bit confusing, I think. You can ask if mice extrapolate down here to 1.8 years, how do they live beyond 1.8 years? I mean, if you reach minimal function, you're supposed to die. And so actually, it has to do because if you solve this model, here we made an approximation in the solution that we're at steady state. Steady state means trucks equals houses at each moment in time. But when you reach the point where trucks really eta t equals beta, then we're not at steady state anymore because houses push larger than trucks, and the steady state is actually infinity. So this solution works only until old age is 80, 90. And after that, so function looks like this. You extrapolate it down to 110. But if you solve the model here, let's say 80, 90, it slows down like that. So that's how mice live here. You slow down. And they're above minimal function. That's because this is a solution requires steady state. When you extrapolate it down, it hits 110. So just now I understood why people ask me about this mouse curve. And close the door. Oh, okay. Oh. Right. Okay. I want to continue, but before that, maybe you have some questions, lingering questions. Yeah.
So the main difference between human and mouse would be that mouse are kept at like optimal conditions, or very well kept. Why do they exceed their like maximum?
So they don't exceed their maximum. So as I said, their function would go like this. In humans, it'll also. But I think if they're not kept in good conditions, they're probably going to have a hard time surviving. Humans, you can say, culture also keeps us in very good conditions. I mean, 100 years ago, median lifespan was 50. Now it's 80 because of reduction in childhood mortality. In child mortality because of infections, clean water, vaccinations, antibiotics. And recently, extension of life because of improvement in stopping heart attacks. So we are also like mice, like in good conditions, you can say, now, 2024. But yeah, it's like interesting that when you're very old, you have a low, like, walking 2 kilometers per hour is a feat if you can do it at age 90, 100. You need
You said that 100 years ago, T50 was 50 or something. So it was even farther that you died with very high VO max.
You're right.
And you died healthy in some sense.
Yeah.
So, like, counterintuitive to the mouse, but
Yeah, the mouse is
very not safe.
right. People like. I think people were more active maybe also,
Yeah.
so you had that good VO2 max. But Why did you die at age 50? It's because of infectious disease, basically.
But Meta and Eta were the same.
Yeah, but you see, you have it, like if you have infectious disease like tuberculosis, cholera, and you don't have antibiotics, it'll kill you. And even if it won't kill you, it's going to make a big challenge. You need a lot of VO2 max to survive it, and you still. So people used to die of that. They used to die of violence. They used to die of childbirth, at childbirth, and childhood mortality was 10 times more than now. So that really reduces T50. So once you made it past age 50, you basically had almost the same chance to survive as now, except for cardiovascular medicine and a little bit of
So are there any other
intensive
animals
care
that die
units.
as us?
Huh?
Are there any other animals that die healthy like us?
Okay, so that was another question. Are humans exceptional? So here's my guess. I don't know the answer. My guess is that humans in the primate family are the ones with the highest possible lifespan. Why? Not for lifespan, but because we evolved for slow development. We teach our children well. We're the only primate that has childhood. Other ones go from toddler to adolescent. And we develop slowly, slowly. And all our processes are geared to high repair, excellent repair, so we can make it to age 25, 30 to reproduce. If you look at mice in the rodent family, there are ones that live much, much longer, decades. And I bet you they'll look like this. If you look at worms, the C. elegans worms live 20 days, that's why you study them. But there's also intestinal worms that live for years, like in the gut of a pig or something.
There's an eye worm that lives for 10
10
years.
years. So I bet you they'll also look like this. But that's just a guess. It's a speculation open for, well, maybe one of you in your final project will want to do that. Like there's data on dogs and cats and maybe worms. Who knows? I don't know. Okay. So thanks for all these questions. I'll try to include them in the notes. I hope you wrote them down, Ben. Helps me how to teach. Okay, now let's talk about what kind of exercise, dose response, and how it works. Okay. Grip strength, aka mice. All right. First of all, let's look at this extension of lifespan. So you want to look at the data. There's a lot of problem. If you ask people how much they exercise, you get inaccurate data. So nowadays there's devices to solve that problem. There's also a confounder about maybe you live longer because you're rich, and if you're rich, you can also exercise. So chicken egg. So it's hard to do epidemiology, but let's talk about a study. Let's take Olympic athletes as a group. As I said, they're elite, but in terms of their lifespan, they're not that different from the top 95%. So they're like, you can get to that more or less same amount of fitness if you want to. Not to Olympics. So you look at the age, and you compare it, and you look at survival, and you get something like this. And you need to compare it to some population. So you compare it to people who were born, same gender, same sex, born in the same year, and lived to the same age as the Olympian participated in the Olympics, the age 20. So this is Olympians. This is general population, matched population. I exaggerated here. So there's a 5-year difference in their T50. as I said before. What about the maximum age?
It's the same. Like,
Yeah, otherwise the Olympians would live to 140. So we have a phenomenon here where the survival curve shifts to the right, longer life, but it's also steeper. Higher median lifespan, but not max lifespan. And you can define max lifespan, you can say the 99th percentile, doesn't matter. Okay, this is data for thousands of people. Now if we think about our model, what parameter, houses, trucks, can shift a curve and make it steeper and not increase the maximum lifespan? But don't guess, let me teach. And it turns out that there's a clear answer if you just change one parameter. If you change two, you can't really tell. And that's the following. If I change the house's building rate, it's like speeding up time. So if I slow down the building house's rate, it's like slowing down time. And the whole curve shifts proportional to itself. So T50, if T50 grows by a factor of 2, Tmax will also grow by a factor of 2. Shifts time by a constant. It's like slows down time. Slows down time. Slows down time, you can say. So it's really good to do. If any of you know how to do that, tell me. Okay? Because I don't think anybody's ever managed to do that in human beings. In mice, yes. But mice maybe aren't optimized for longevity. We'll talk in one lecture about all the interventions in mice, metformin, rapamycin, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What about trucks? So trucks, when X is large, I say when you're old, it's like a constant because trucks are a maximum. So this is like shifting time, not multiplying by a number, but shifting it, the curve parallel to itself and adding age. It's not multiplying time, it's adding years. So trucks, beta, should be like this. So if this is 5 years, this should also be 5 years. If here this is like factor of 2, this will also be factor of 2. You see what I mean? So it's not beta. So what can do that? And the answer is X critical and noise. They do this. And we think the way, if you can tell the difference between how much they extend this and how much, and their steepness, and we think it's X critical. So what does that mean? People who exercise need more X to die. Why does that shift the maximum lifespan? It's because the damage in this model rises so quickly that if you increase this, you gain a tiny amount in lifespan, tiny. But the early deaths just don't happen when your threshold is high because they're exponentially rarer. So you get the steepness because you don't get the early deaths. And it's nice to be steep because you die along with all your friends, all your Olympian friends. You can meet them, right? You don't have to miss them. They died 20 years ago. No. They come to your funerals, you go to their funerals. I wanted you to parent share and talk about this, what I just said, about how you can, from the survival curve steepness, understand which parameter is being affected. Okay, so find someone next to you and talk about that. You too. Introduce yourself if you don't know each other. Glenn, look, there's someone over there with a laptop. Can you introduce yourself? Glenn, would you mind doing that? I'm forcing you. Here. Nobody left so alone in my course. Glenn, you can introduce yourself. Okay. Any questions emerge during your discussion? Any questions emerge during your discussion?
I didn't get the part about the graph. Why when you stop adding houses, it's like times 2, and when you add more trucks,
It's like plus. So I explained it very intuitively. The house building rate multiplies time. So if I multiply it by a factor of 2, it's like I'm speeding up time. I'm aging twice as fast. And if I'm multiplying it by times 1/2, it's like I'm multiplying time by a half. So it's slowing down time. So houses, their linear rise kind of determines the lifespan and everything. In mice, they rise much faster. In humans, they rise much slower. We think that would determine the lifespan. It's like multiplying time. The trucks, when they get saturated, it's like subtracting. So it's like eta t minus beta over eta. So it's like taking time and subtracting a number from it. So trucks, improving trucks adds years. Slowing down the houses multiplies time, slows down time. It's like different things. You can move the curve parallel to itself or stretch time, and then maximum actually moves more than median, because if I make the median 80 and I add 10% to it, 88, the maximum 120, add 12 to it, 132. That's both 10%. But if I add only 8 years, median 80 to 88, maximum 120 to 128, not 132. So I can tell if it's beta or eta. But it's not beta or eta, because the maximum doesn't change. And we're left with x squared equal r. So fascinating, actually, to narrow down. And the explanation is very easy to understand. For example, if you exercise, you have more VO2 max. That means for a given challenge, you can bring more energy in. You're more resilient. Makes a lot of sense that it's x critical. The way exercise gives you this extra longevity.
If we change the noise, I guess all you get have lower noise levels.
I don't know about noise levels. Actually, noise is very mysterious. I don't know about noise levels. Could be noise. And we're trying to understand that right now. It looks more like X critical from the shape, but it could be. You had a question?
Yeah, again about the noise, like what would it mean?
Yeah, I don't know what the noise is. Maybe regular life, good sleep. Yeah.
So you say it's not the facts, but exercise do improve immune function.
It improves immune function. But I'm guessing it doesn't increase the number of NK cells and macrophages that remove the senescent cells. That's how I would interpret it.
Would you call this robustness of the system?
Resilience.
Resilience?
That's when you explain out the explanation for VO2 max, so that can help you have a high threshold. But that, you have different sports in Olympics, like Sonic Marathon or swimming, VO2 max is probably very high. Let's say weightlifting, I don't know if that's high.
Yeah, so you're asking about different sports. So in lecture notes, they show this for different sports. Javelin throwing, it's like they have slightly different.
How about not exercising, but having this more active lifestyle?
More active lifestyle. Okay, let's go from that to what kind of exercise. What does it mean, active lifestyle? Let's do that, because this is so important. Okay, great. We're doing great on time. So Oh, by the way, men and women. Women live longer. Guess, is their survival curve steeper or shallower?
Deeper?
Women live longer. Is it garbage trucks, houses? Huh?
Shallower.
So women compared to men are like Olympians compared to regular. They live longer and they have steeper curve. And it looks like X critical. So females look like they're more resilient.
But their max is also higher.
Their what?
Their max is also higher.
Their max what?
Max lifespan.
Yeah. Their max is higher, it's true. So X critical doesn't keep it, raises it slightly. Yeah. It's true. All the top 10 record keepers are female.
That's slightly more than
Slightly more, like 119, 117. Slightly. It's a good point, though. We need to think more about that somehow. So, okay, so we talked about women, sick, widow. That's an old Yiddish saying. More disease susceptibility, longer lifespan. Yeah. Not all diseases. Like men have more cancer. That scales with body size. Women have more autoimmune diseases. More cardiovascular diseases after menopause. All this kind of stuff. Women, yeah. It's all in the book Systems Medicine, if you want to read. It's the book I wrote from the last course, and I'm thinking now to write a book about this course. I like it so much. Like this chapter. This is so amazing. Okay, now we want to talk about what kinds of exercise. So we're thinking about, first of all, health. We think about 3 dimensions: physical, cognitive, emotional. We want to be good in all of them, otherwise we have no purpose to life. Exercise helps on all 3, right? But what kind of exercise? So we have 4 pillars of exercise. So I'm going to write that down. It's very important, right? We have health, we have physical, cognitive, emotional, spiritual, musical. Exercise helps. What kind of exercise? There are 4 pillars, and you need to think in 4 dimensions. Right? The first one has to do with aerobic. So we want to increase VO2 max, increase cardiac capacity, and all that stuff. What is aerobic? So you ask me what kind of exercise? If you're looking at your cell phone now, this is the time to put it down. It'll be life-changing for you. So what's the recommended thing is called zone 2. So different ways to, usually 5 zones of activity. Zone 2 is something like 70 to 85% of your max heart rate, which, as I mentioned before, also goes down like this. From 210, hits 0 at 110. Something like that. And it's not so much affected by exercise, your maximum heart rate. So you can the way it feels is, you can have a conversation, but it's very stressful. It's very straining. And you need to do 150 minutes per week. But this could also be swim, cycle, run, walk briskly. Here's the dose. Okay, so this is 150. This is 300. This is 450 minutes per week. This is added lifespan. You gain 3 years then another 1 year, and then again another. So you get 3 years, 1 year, 1/3 year, diminishing returns. That's data. You can find it in the lecture notes. Like that. Second,
Is it better to do it once or several times a week?
I think people say 45 minutes. If you do, so as I told you, your body runs out of glucose. You turn on your breathing rate, so that takes a minute. But after more time, you deplete your glucose stores in the muscle, and the body turns on hormones like glucagon that tell your liver to make new glucose, and also tells your fat to release fatty acids, which is a great fuel. One glucose plus oxygen, 32 ATPs. One long fatty acid plus oxygen, 130 ATPs. And people who are fit, their body starts burning fat before glucose, and you lose weight. But that takes some time because you need your body to deplete the glucose. So you need 20, 30, 40 minutes, something like that. Plus, you get the hormones, the good feeling hormones, because you get this fight or flight response. You get cortisol, beta endorphins, cannabinoids. They're painkillers and euphorics. And some people get runner's high, and you can get addicted to exercise. Your natural painkillers and euphorics. But that takes a little bit of time. You need 30 minutes, something like that. So I think that would tell me how much to do it. So anaerobic, this is, we want to increase VO2 max. And one protocol says 4 minutes of really your hard work and 4 minutes of moderate times 6 or something like that. So that's like intervals. This makes your body work so hard, your mitochondria run out of oxygen, even though you're and then the mitochondria need to get better. Your heart becomes bigger so that it pushes more blood out. The cardiac output does improve with exercise. It declines with age. But that's not enough. As I said, with age, we have a loss of bone and muscle. So we have to do strength training, which is resistance training. So when you're starting out, you can use your body weight, like push-ups. And later, you need weights like gym, 1 time a week, let's say, in order to slow the decline of muscle mass, muscle strength. And that's not enough. You want not to be injured. So you need stability training, yoga, Pilates, flexibility, stability, in order to, it's basically, part of it is core, like transmitting force through your body as a rigid unit and not like this. And this causes, the extra energy goes to your joints and you get joint injuries, etc. So it's very important, and also your balance and flexibility not to fall again. So that's what you need to do if you want to do the centenarian decathlon. Questions about this? Now this turned into a gym advice class, but yeah, well.
So, gym advice question. 150 minutes a week for, let's say, running or if you say running, it's more than 20 kilometers.
Yeah.
Something that people
Yeah.
do.
Right. So if it's vigorous, they let you do just 75 minutes per week.
Oh, okay. So
Moderate. Is that better? Yeah.
What's the anaerobic?
The what?
What's the anaerobic part?
Yeah, I like to do once per week interval training.
No, like what type of exercise?
Oh, so it's like if you're swimming, like you swim as fast as you can, or like the fastest you can hold 4 minutes for, and then when in the 4 minute rest, you make your heart rate go below 100. So if you're like, I don't know, if those of you here that are 30-year-old, your maximum heart rate beat is 210 minus 30 more, 180. So you probably reach 160, and then you rest those 100, and then you go 100. It's not very comfortable. The moderate is really comfortable. The anaerobic is not comfortable. The strength is kind of fun. The stability is really great. I mean, really recommend it. I do a lot of yoga. I told you to go to yoga, and you said no, no. That's why I wrote this song. Okay, so we talked about the dose response, diminishing returns. We talked about the kinds of exercise in a nutshell. It's there's not like there's like somebody studied like all possible combinations. It's not like that. Yeah, you have a question.
Yeah, about the age when you start
Yeah, the age.
Like,
Yeah.
let's say start now and stop when I'm about 30, 35,
Yeah.
it won't help me in the long run.
Okay.
Like, not as much. But if
Right.
I start when I'm old,
So the question is, if you start now, will it help me in the long run? If you start now and stop. So if you start now and stop, the benefits decline. Some time constant of months.
why won't I just start exercise when I'm 40?
Yeah, you can start exercising when you're 40. So what they say in the literature is that it's good to start at any age, also when you're 80, and you can go from 5% to 50% quite easily just by walking, like for an hour or something. And it's very, very beneficial. So you can start at any age. You don't have to start now. Why start now is because also now it has benefits. So I didn't tell you yet about the mood and cognitive. It increases blood flow to the brain and improves cognitive scores, you do better on tests. And also chance of depression goes down 26%, which is each standard deviation of movement measured by devices. How do we know that? I told you there's a big confound. If I ask people, do you exercise 150 minutes? They say yes, no. They're lying. They don't know. But if you, or not lying, but people don't know. But if you look at their device, you can know. But still, are they exercising because they're rich or because they have a gym? Who knows? So there's something called, you'll see in your exercise, something called Mendelian randomization, which is a modern technique to use genomes to solve chicken and egg problems like that. Who heard of Mendelian randomization? Great, so I'm teaching you biology, something new and exciting. And in the exercise, you'll get to read a paper about that and explain it. The idea is basically, you look for DNA change, you look at like tens of thousands of people, you look at your DNA sequence, you find changes in their genes that correlate with activity, and you use that as a proxy for activity, and then you correlate that with things like major depression. And you look for genes that correlate with major depression, and use that to correlate with activity. So you get both sides. I'm not going to ask questions about that, take questions because it's part of your exercise, but it's a way to know the causality. It turns out that activity reduces depression. Depression doesn't reduce activity. So it's a pretty interesting result, and even gives you the size effect. So that's a big advance in recent years. You can decouple things in nutrition, and of course it has its limits and confounders, but you should check it out. Mendelian randomization. All right.
Can I go back to the 4 pillars?
Yeah.
Did you say once a week for anaerobic strength and stability? Once a week each? That seems like not very
I mean, those are like the minimum recommendations.
Yeah.
Is that a lot? Seems a lot or a little?
A little.
A little?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I mean, this is like, I'd say I'm not an expert on exercise or something like that. I swim a few times a week. I do my yoga. I do some anaerobic and swimming. I don't do strength yet. I want to start.
Yeah, no,
Okay, but I'm glad to hear that. It doesn't sound like a lot. You can do more. There's no problem. There's really people try to see is there an amount of exercise that's bad for you, and in this range, there's no data that it's bad for you. It's like, of course, you can injure yourself. You have to exercise responsibly. But all right. So what else do I want to tell you? These are great questions. Do you have any other questions? Yeah, I'm listening. Oh, yeah. As far as I know, it's no difference from female and male, but I want to say something. This reminds me. People are different, and there are people who don't need exercise to be healthy and live long. Example, Winston Churchill. He has a famous quote. I get my exercise being a pallbearer, carrying the coffin of my many friends who exercised all their life. He lived to 90. He was very active. I don't know if he was active for sure. I don't think so. I want to say this for everyone. These are the recommendations. This is cross-sectional data. It hides a lot of variability between people. So did that answer your question? Yeah, could be men and women have different. So yeah, for women, it's recommended to do strength training because it builds bone density, especially. So you guys want to have good bones for menopause. So like my daughters, for example, they carry very heavy bags to school, and that childhood and puberty is when you build your bone density. So it's very good to carry. In general, it's good to carry, build bone density. And so that's sexually dimorphic advice about bones, especially.
I guess it would change with age also. Like the
Yeah, right. So in old age, there's like special bone training and things like that. This is like what I give you here is like this is like the vanilla. I don't know, a World Health Organization recommendations. If you go into the rabbit hole and research it, there's a lot to say, right? And another thing is you need to find something that's sustainable, that you enjoy. So I love swimming. I just love being in the water. Other people love running and nature. Other people love gyms. So it's like you have to find something you don't have to, right? Don't have to. Okay, what else did I want to tell you? Yeah, one more thing before we stop. I'd like to do something, it's up to you, that'll increase your chance of actually exercising more in the coming week. So I want to do something with you. Of course, you don't have to, but if you do, I think you'll enjoy it. So it's going to have two parts. First part, you take out your cell phone, open Google Calendar, and choose an hour next week that fits your schedule where you can do something active, even walking. So do that now. I want to see everyone's phones. So write it down on your calendar. Choose it. But where's your phone? What? So we'll do another one. Always can do more. You don't have to. Okay, choose an hour, write exercise. Think even what you're going to do. Is it going to be walking, swimming, gym, running, yoga class, Pilates class. In Weizmann, there's classes, yogas and Pilates. They cost 110 shekels a month, and you can do as many as you want. There's like 6 or 8 yoga classes per week, 6 or 8 Pilates classes per week here in the student center. They're really good. The yoga, I can recommend. Okay. Does anybody need more time? Now, next thing, in order to increase the chances this happens, I'm going to make exercise allies. And you're also going to participate to be his ally. You keep your calendar. You're going to turn to the person, ask them when and what they're going to do. Then you're going to take their phone number and schedule 2 calls. Before to remind them, you ask them, when should I call you before? And after to ask how it was. Okay? So please turn to, in both ways, right? So turn to your ally next to you. You turn to him. You can be his ally. Glenn, you have an ally back there. Okay? You can go get her phone number and don't be shy. You have an ally? Do you have his number? How many do you do? How many minutes do you do in your, according to this?
I mean, usually I do aerobic once a week for about an hour. I've neglected that, so I added that next week. And then for strength, I do 180 minutes.
Wow.
Something like that. And I don't know about stability. That'd be good to try. And I think anaerobic would get pulled into one of the other two.
Like the strength?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So there's actually research about commitment. Like if you want to make a habit change, if you schedule it, it'll more likely to happen. And if you have a social commitment, so that's why this is research about habits. All right. So we have a few more minutes for questions. Yeah.
Why does the, so like if you increase the number of doses, it just doesn't increase linearly, right?
Why is it diminishing returns? Well, I guess there's some physical limit to how much material we have in our body to build machines that can burn oxygen, for example. And I'm betting that in our evolutionary past, we were here, and unusually, we were here. So I think in modern life, the fact that we're not active is very unusual, and that's why not exercising, I call it like taking a depression pill and a cancer pill and a diabetes pill and an Alzheimer pill, because we're not designed like that. Huh? Born to run. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything special that aerobic exercise can do? Like anaerobic, VO2 max?
Yeah. So what about aerobic exercise? So aerobic exercise also increases VO2 max by 10-15%. It allows you to sustain moderate activity for a long time. So your blood volume grows by 10%. Your heart volume grows. Your mitochondrial like defective mitochondria are removed and mitochondria number increase. So you have more capacity. And again, people think evolutionarily human beings evolved to be hunter-gatherers, so hunting is like hours, days of tracking moderate, and then explosive power when you kill. So it's like aerobic and anaerobic. So like we were designed for that somehow. So I think it's very important. This is probably what most people do, and it's probably best all around. But don't forget stability and strength.
Is there any correlation between the bone density and the muscle strength?
Correlation between bone density and muscle strength. I think so. I remember reading about it, but I'm not sure.
You stress VO2 max. What about exercises that focus on it specifically, like breathing exercises?
VO2 max?
Yeah, breathing exercises, free diving.
Yeah. There's lots of things you can do for VO2 max, aerobic and anaerobic, and also high oxygen therapy can do that. And maybe I don't know about deep diving. You can hold your breath for a long time. Maybe increases VO2 max. I don't know. More people. I want to hear from more people, from a variety of people. I think if you have a question that's interesting for you. Yeah.
Probably, I'm not sure how much you know, but like, what about the menstrual cycle and different kinds of exercise?
I don't know about that. Okay, let's take a nice deep sigh of relief. Next week, nutrition.